Kelly here and my husband Chris in his cool cowboy hat.
Hi.
We are going to do a Bible study this morning. We only have a very short time before I have to go to work. We are working our way through Exodus and thought that for those of you that might want to turn on a video when you're doing chores or whatever you're doing to hear the Word of God, it might be an easy way to do it. The good thing about what we're going to be incorporating in this Bible study is we have this awesome study Bible that has so many cool facts that help give texture and context to the periods that the
It's a
Bible...
fantastic Bible. Shout out to Holman. This is the New King James Version.
Yeah.
But they make one in pretty much every version.
So I'm going to read, we are on chapter 3 of Exodus, starting with number 3. We did do 1 and 2 before we started recording, so feel free to go back and do that yourself so that you can follow along with us till the end. It's a very long book, so that's my whole hope, that we can just do a little bit a day, you know, so we can get through it. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So just to recap 1 and 2, that was, and by the way, we do use all kinds of Bibles. We're not stuck on any one version, but I'm going to be reading out of the English Standard Version, and he's going to be the actual scriptures, and then he's going to follow along with the notes for those particular passages afterwards. Basically, 1 and 2 covered Pharaoh oppresses Israel. And if you remember, Joseph brought Israel to Egypt, saved them by God's grace and provision for giving him the information about the famine that was coming. And then they multiplied there, and then they were turned into slaves. So Pharaoh oppresses Israel, the birth of Moses. Moses flees to Midian. And the last section, which I'll just read, guiding us into number 3, is God hears Israel's groaning. This is the end of section 2. During those many days, the king of Egypt died, and the people of Israel groaned because of their slavery and cried out for help. Their cry for rescue from slavery came up to God. And God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. God saw the people of Israel, and God knew. So that's 23 and 24. Do you want to give us the notes on those?
Yes. 23 and 24.
In section 2.
It's actually 23 to 25.
Okay.
The word groaning describes a man with broken arms in Ezekiel 30:24. 4 different words for the Israelite outcry and 4 words for God's response combined to make a weighty statement of desperation in response. The formality is enhanced in Hebrew by the unusual repetition of the word God as the subject of each verb in verse 24, which also underscores God's superiority and sovereignty. God heard, God remembered, God looked upon, God had respect unto them. God's remembering is more than mental awareness. It applies action that fulfills covenant promises. And it has the list of the books where the covenant promises are.
Okay.
But I won't go over those. The command to remember the Sabbath day is parallel to the command to keep the Sabbath. Had respect, which you didn't say. You said no, which is the translated version. But in the original King James Version, it says, God looked upon the children of Israel, and God had respect unto them.
Oh, okay. Cool.
But had respect translates a verb often translated to know or knew, which, like remember, typically involves more than awareness of information. Here it carries the thought of exercising personal concern for someone.
Mm-hmm.
Because God knew their situation and took action, the Israelites and others would come to know him in a new way. This verse assumes that readers are familiar with promises that God had made and confirmed by covenants with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
So God not only knew, but he was obviously or apparently gravely concerned for his people, his chosen people.
That always amazes me, just how big God is, how he could stop the sun shining at any time, cut off our heat, do anything, but he cares. Like, he's so intricately involved in all of our lives. So that's awesome. One thing I want to just recap for the entire book of Exodus before we get too far is that some of the this is my notes from our last study, is that Exodus is also has four main components to it, which is God reveals himself to his people, redemption, the people prayed for deliverance and he responded because they could not save themselves. And we're studying this, or I'm studying this book in particular at this time right now, because I do believe that we have some tribulation coming up and we are in those days. And because the Bible confirms itself, and there's usually types and shadows through history of future things tied to past things, I think there's going to be a lot of revelation in here for us to take into consideration in current times. It also established the law and the Ten Commandments, the narrow path, and the tabernacle. The tabernacle, not the pumpernickel. The tabernacle.
The pumpernickel.
Not the pumpernickel. With God dwelling among his people. So those are some of the big concepts that are in this book. All right, so let's start with, I'm going to keep my thing here in case I want to take notes or note anything. All right, so number 3. I'm going to start with, let's see where I'm going to go down to. Okay, so I'm going to do 1 through 6, and then you can read the notes, okay?
Okay.
All right. Now Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, and he led his flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. He looked, and behold, the bush was burning, yet it was not consumed. And Moses said, I will turn aside to see this great sight, why the bush is not burned. When the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, God called to him out of the bush, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here I am. Then he said, Do not come near. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. And he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. So before you read that, I just want to make one note. There's a lot of names for God, but one of the names for God is actually the God of Jacob. The God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, which is a long name. But it is a correct name identifying God, just FYI. Okay, what do you got on that intro? So this section is about the burning bush.
Jethro. Jethro Tull.
Oh, I'm thinking Jethro from Beverly Hills.
Beverly Hills, yeah, that one of those too.
Yeah.
Jethro.
Oh, Jethro has a really cool meaning too, which
Jethro
go ahead and read that.
Was also called Reuel. And Hobab. Hobab! Many ancient gods were associated with a mountain where they were believed to live. The Lord was by no means limited to this mountain, however, as his actions at other mountains and other places make clear. 3:2-3. The angel of the Lord was active in Genesis to inform, rebuke, protect, and provide guidance and success. The account in Exodus 3 describes the following conversation as directly between the Lord and Moses. Fire is frequently associated with special displays of God's presence.
Okay.
3:5-6, the possibility of danger implicit in human contact with God is reflected throughout Scripture. This place was holy, not because of any quality intrinsic to it, but because of God's presence and activity. The tabernacle would be a place set apart by the Lord's presence. To stay at a distance and remove footwear was then and is now in many countries a sign of respect and humility. The Lord's self-identification, which began, "I am the God thy Father," connected this event with the past both by naming the patriarchs and by the wording of the statement, which is basically what you just said.
Yeah, cool.
In Egypt, oh, that's it. That was 3-6, or yeah, 1-6.
Okay. All right, this is going to be relatively short because my bell just rang and I'm supposed to be getting ready for work now and I only have a few minutes.
She's got her bell rung.
I got a bell rung. Okay, let's see what we can do. All right, next.
Ring your bell.
Then the Lord, he got the look. Then the Lord said, "I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt and have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their sufferings, and I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them out of that land to a good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. And now, behold, the cry of the people of Israel has come to me, and I have also seen the oppression with which the Egyptians oppress them. Come, and I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt." But Moses said to God, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt?" He said, "But I will be with you, and this shall be the sign for you that I have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain." And that's 7-12.
7-12. In 3:8, it says, "In Egypt, the Israelite flocks were limited to the small region of Goshen. By comparison, the new land would be large, flowing with milk and honey." Resentful Levites later used this phrase to describe Egypt. The word for honey may also describe a sweet syrup made from boiling dates, grapes, and other fruit, which sounds delicious.
Yeah, it does.
Moses' question, "Who am I?"
Wait, I think I had seen something once about that, about honey, and it was compared to like jelly, like that you could make jelly out of the what's the earth was giving you. So that sounds interesting. I think, but
maybe it was
I'm not sure if I'm
interchangeable
remembering
with
that right. Yeah.
anything that you would spread on something.
Yeah,
that
fruit.
Made from,
fruit. You know,
fruit
well,
or
honey's
nature.
not fruit, but yeah.
Nature.
Okay.
I don't know. 3:11-12. Moses' question, "Who am I?" reminds us that one of the Hebrews asked Moses in 2:14, effectively, "Who are you?" The answer to these questions has nothing to do with Moses' upbringing or abilities. The Lord's response, a promise to Moses, "Certainly I will be with thee," depends for its value on who the Lord is. It matters that he is present because he is willing and able to act. This promise gave Moses grounds for authority that was missing earlier and continues the important theme of God's personal involvement in the lives of his people. To serve God with all of the Israelites at the mountain where God and Moses were speaking would be a sign for Moses, because he would be able to look back and know that his worship was possible only because of what the Lord had done.
That's a really important part, because stuff that we're going through now, stuff that I think, okay, so this was my prayer yesterday, and I don't have a lot of time to expound and talk in this Bible study, this one. But one important point is, when I was praying yesterday, those of us that are being called for God to use or to speak, that are being called during this time, answering the call for God. Whoever that is, however that translates for you, whether, anyway, just leave it at that. I mean, I'm so aware of my insufficiency. I'm so aware of my limitations. I'm an old lady. My bones hurt. I'm aware, of all of my limitations. And it reminds me also of that Bible verse that God uses the weak to confound the strong, or the something to, you know what I'm saying? Basically God. So my point is, we never have to worry about us, because what we have to focus on is the sufficiency of Christ within us. And throughout the Bible, there's other parts about I am with you, I will be with you. That should be enough. That's where you have to lay your ego aside and say, yes, you can't object to God. Who am I? Yeah. He's you don't have to worry about who you are. I know you're imperfect. I know you're a sinner. I know you're not up to the task.
I know you're frail.
I know you're frail. But
physically up to it.
But I am the strength in you.
If I'm with you, you can do it.
If I'm with you, there's nothing you can't do.
Well, through God, all things are possible.
Yeah. So I think that's just an important distinction and reminder, a great reminder that, yes, we're just men. With God, all things are possible. That's awesome. Okay. The next one is going to be, I'm just going to read it to the end, and then you can read the rest of the notes. So
okay.
It's going to be 13
I thought you were running
through,
out of time. My apologies.
I am, 22. 13 through 22, because then we're going to be done with this section. And
Yeah.
we'll just have to be a couple minutes late for work. Because God's more important. Yes, he is. Okay. Then Moses said to God, if I come to the people of Israel and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me, and they ask me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, say this to the people of Israel, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and thus I am to be remembered throughout all generations. Go and gather the elders of Israel together, and say to them, the Lord of God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob, has appeared to me, saying, I have observed you, and what has been done to you in Egypt. And I promise that I will bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt to the land of the Canaanites. I just want to stop here. I promise that I will bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt. So for all of us now that are very scared about what's happening in the world, what's on the news, how things are going, God has promised that he will bring us up out of the affliction, then for Egypt and now through these times, okay? It's written in the word, so I just want to give us that reassurance that we just don't have to worry about it and just cast those cares on him. So I will bring you up out of the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, a land flowing with milk and honey. And they will listen to your voice, and you and the elders of Israel shall go to the king of Egypt and say to him, the Lord of God of the Hebrews has met with us, and now please let us go a 3 days journey into the wilderness. That way we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. But I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go unless compelled by a mighty hand. So I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all the wonders that I will do in it. After that he will let you go. And I will give this people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. And when you go, you shall not go empty. But each woman shall ask of her neighbor and any woman who lives in her house for silver and gold jewelry and for clothing. You shall put them on your sons and on your daughters, so you shall plunder the Egyptians. And just FYI, the reason I'm reading out of the English Standard Version is because as we're doing storytelling through these studies, I think especially for people that struggle with the King James or whatever with Old English. It's just a very simple, it's a simpler interpretation of just for the story and then the notes, and I think the combination of the two is a good mix. So, okay.
So he's like, grab stuff on your way out.
Oh, well, this is all about God's promises. Like, there's so many promises through the Bible that talk about, lay not your hand on my prophets. Like basically, when you mess with God's people, and in all the wars, they take the plunder. So meaning you will be redeemed. Like you will. What does that one passage say? It's like when the thief is caught, he will lose all the contents. He will lose everything up to and including possibly the contents of his house.
I'm just impressed with it. Well, I mean, it's kind of humorous because he's like, look, don't leave empty-handed.
Yeah,
but
they've been abusing you. We're going to take some of their stuff.
He's also preparing them. They need that.
That's true.
They're going to need those jewels. They're going to need those remnants.
Clothes.
They're going to need that stuff for the journey.
Yep.
Not only because they need clothes, but the jewels are probably used to pay for passage and stuff they're going to need. So
more provision. Never thought of that. Awesome. Okay, read the rest, and then we got to close out because I got to.
Oh, okay. So we were at 3:13. 3:13 through 15. Here's the note for that. God's statement is worded with a finality that sometimes appears at the end of a conversation, typically to put an end to debate without volunteering information. Like Pilate's statement, "What have I written? What I have written, I have written." The statements containing "I am" use the same Hebrew verb that God's promise, "I will be with your mouth," does in verse 12. The wordplay with the verb makes it especially prominent and recalls the promise as if to remind Moses, the one who promises to be with you is the one who sends you. Since Hebrew verbs gather much of their temporal meaning from their contexts, the same form can indicate present or future or both at once, depending on the situation. Here, the promise in 3:12, 4:12 and 15 are oriented to the future. So though will is appropriate in English, it does not exclude God's presence with Moses at the time they were speaking. Nor does the English present tense am in 3:14 exclude the future. I see what they're saying.
What are they saying?
Just because he's saying will, which is, it does not exclude God's presence. In other words, will doesn't necessarily just mean the future.
Okay.
It means now too.
Okay.
When he's saying "I will be with you,"
yes,
it also means "I am now with you."
Okay.
And "am" doesn't just mean "I am now."
Right.
It is "am" as in I am always.
Right.
"Am" is not
beyond
past,
time.
Future, and present tense.
Okay.
It's everything.
Okay.
I believe that's what that means, but I'm not very smart. The name the Lord Jehovah.
More.
What?
We can pray about it more.
Okay. The name the Lord Jehovah is connected etymologically. I'm good with words. With the Hebrew verb
He's
to
a
be,
writer, by the way.
that appears so prominently. I may have read it, but that doesn't mean I've said it.
Okay.
That appears to be prominently in verses 12 and 14. Jehovah was no stranger. He was the God of their fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, 400 years in Egypt, and had not annulled the promises he made to them and their offspring. He now sent Moses to their descendants, the Israelites. If the Israelites wanted to know who he was, They needed to look at what he had done. When the King James Version uses the word Lord with large and small capital letters, it is representing the Hebrew name that can also be translated as Yahweh.
Oh, okay.
If
I
you
know
see
that.
Lord with a capital L,
Oh, it means
you
Yahweh?
can just drop in Yahweh.
What does little L mean?
Same thing.
Oh, okay. I doubt that, but we'll
No,
get into
look.
that later.
No, look.
I don't have time.
The capital L.
Okay.
So see what they did? They did on the fonting in the Bible. You've got a capital L that's big.
Yeah.
And the O-R-D are also capitalized, but they're small. They're not lowercase letters. They're capitalized, but they're smaller than the L.
Oh, so it's
So whenever
still always a capital L. It's just
whenever you see that
word is capital or not.
Yeah, whenever you see that, it apparently it translates as Yahweh, which is neat. I've never noticed that before.
Yeah. Okay. Learned something new. I'm gonna have to look at that because I don't quite get.
I told you. It's
no,
right
I do. I'll look at it later. I really got to go to work. So
okay.
Keep on.
3:18, 3 days journey that we may sacrifice was a reasonable request since other slave groups in Egypt received permission for similar journeys to worship their gods. Something about Israelite sacrifices was abhorrent to the Egyptians. A 3-day trip into the wilderness.
To most people, it's terrifying. Guts and blood everywhere.
A 3-day trip into the wilderness would get them well out of sight.
Okay.
So they would let them leave for 3 days.
Yeah.
You know, to sacrifice their lambs or whatever they were going to kill and then come back.
Hey, we want to have a slaughter party. How about
you guys are all invited.
We'll have it here if you want.
No, you can
it's
do it out.
Be messy.
You can do it out in the woods.
Slaughter party. Okay, go ahead.
Slaughter rave. The phrase, no, not by a mighty hand, could mean not unless he is forced to by something strong, or not even a strong man, but only by divine help. That was in 3:19.
Okay.
In 3:20, the two clauses, I will stretch out my hand and he will let you go, both use a form of the same Hebrew verb, making tight connection between cause and effect. When God's hand goes to work, the Israelites will go out of Egypt. The contest would be between the hand of the Lord and the hand of the Egyptians, as personified by Pharaoh. And in 3:21 through 22, which I believe was where you ended, gifts of silver and gold would fulfill what the Lord had told Abraham, repeating the pattern of Abraham's own departure from Egypt with wealth that had been handed to him in Genesis 12, 16, 20.
Okay.
The word translated spoil as a parallel use in 2 Chronicles 20:25 to describe plundering corpses on the battlefield. Its use in Exodus 3:22 and 12:36 shows the extravagant extent of the Lord's victory over Egypt, which may be why 3:22 particularly mentions that Israelite women, non-combatants ordinarily.
Go ahead.
Look.
I know there was a hyphen, whatever.
They put a hyphen here. And now I feel like a complete moron. Ordinarily.
Ordinarily.
Denarily is.
Denarily
is.
What?
It's a delicious dairy treat that you put strawberries on.
Okay, great. Gravy. It's gravy. It's fruit.
Denarily. Would be asking.
Come on, man. I got to go.
I'm sorry, I fumbled at the 1 yard line.
Okay.
The Lord's victory over it, which may be why in 3:22 particularly mentions that Israeli women, non-combatants, ordinarily would do the asking. In 11:2 and 12:35, men also participate.
I think that's important because women had no authority and generally don't have authority to do things like, hey, give me your stuff. You know what I'm saying? It's the fact that that they would be able to do that and have no resistance is important because it means God is with them. That, you know, that's my take on that.
Yeah, you got non-combatants getting spoils instead of
you're not fighting for anything.
spoils.
You're like, hey, I want your
Give me.
most precious stuff.
Give it to me.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Is that?
That's it.
Okay. So first of all,
Denarily.
Let's go make some of that for our ice cream.
Yes.
Some fruit treats. I just want to close and say.
We're gonna roll denarily along.
Denarily. Life is but a dream. Okay. I just want you guys to know a couple things. Number one.
Number 1.
My point is.
2.
We are
3.
not appropriate people. We have a wicked sense of humor, the both of us. So, I want number
4.
one is we
count weird.
I don't want anyone to think for any second we disrespect the Lord when we're reading His Word and if we crack jokes or whatever. He knows our hearts. Absolutely make that clear. God gets the glory for His Word, all of that, and we are not trying to mess it up with our humor. Those are we're
That's
just
God
people
giving me
talking.
giggles. That's all.
Okay, this is why it's Gigglefish. Okay, if you don't have a sense of humor and you're all uptight, and
Go away.
then this just isn't the channel for you. Okay. So, and I think that's an important thing for God, that it's very important that we do not judge by appearances. It's God's word. However you interpret us, that's not important. What's important is the word. I do feel we rushed it. I don't like that because of my job.
It was very rushed today. I think that we should make more time.
Absolutely. So I'm going to go back. We'll go back and get some more insights and do our own little deeper dive into that. And that's your job too, to take things to the Lord and get understanding. But hopefully we at least got the ball rolling, and we're going to keep doing this until we're done with Exodus. Hope you join us. Hope you had a good time, and we love you.
Thanks.
Peace out.
God bless.
2.
2.
Okay. Yes. Okay.